US, or when we move from the US to France, we think we're alike, and actually we discover, progressively the depths of these differences. But I think what makes maybe our book a little bit newer and different, bringing a fresh outlook on it, is that we try to incarnate those differences. So we had lots of fun, running these interviews and hearing the sound, the actual experiences from all these people working one with another. And so it's really a book of quotes. The real important thing is to trigger that curiosity of, being, in such a rich, interesting environment, working together. And yes, maybe the French are, more interested in debating ideas, and the Americans are more interested in, being very pragmatic and moving forward with the project. But at the end of the day, the joys of working together is really, incomparable to anything else. And and Sabine, please interrupt me. I'm starting, but of course you've been my partner in crime in this project, and I think we really enjoyed also understanding our mutual differences. Both of us coming from a very different background.
Agathe, maybe we can just present ourselves just in 5 minutes, just that people know your background, and I'm gonna do my background in 5 minutes too, and then maybe we can just tell the audience why we did the book at the end of the day.
Yeah. Why, and also maybe we'll have some fun stories to tell you about some of these experiences. So maybe start, Sabine, and we can alternate.
Okay, that was not the goal, but I mean, if you say so. So, okay, let's do it. Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having us. It's such an honor for being here. So I'm not French. I'm actually Swiss/American/Dutch/Danish or whatever. But I was born in California, and because of my father. And so I spent a couple of years, 8 first years in the US on the West Coast, and then we moved to Switzerland in the French-speaking part, knowing that my father is a German-speaking Swiss guy. So the whole family had to move in the French-speaking part of Switzerland, so we had to learn French. So this gives you a kind of sense of how many languages we had at the dinner table, between French, English, Dutch, and whatever. So, and the American spirit was always really, deeply in our roots, because my dad was, he was bouncing back and forth to California for his career. So he worked, in the educational field and chemistry field. So this is how, I'm really I'm a deeply proud American, if we can say so. And my brother he went back to the US, and I went back to the US with my entire family. So I moved from Milan to the US 12 years ago, actually. So my professional background in 2 seconds. So I'm a specialist of visual communication. I've worked for 30 years in the big brands of fashion and design. And now I am I'm developing a platform for art and creative maker and creative technologists, developing digital solution /VR, AR, whatever, with art for the corporation. So this is my background. And so I bounce it back to my dear co-author, Agathe, because now we're spending so much time together. So it's a kind of like a couple, right? So go ahead. Agathe.
Yes. So thank you, Sabine. So for me, I'm clearly the one on the French side, but I spent some first years of my life in Princeton, and that's where my mother met my mother-in-law, and then my husband, who is now my husband. So deeply connected with the US, both my father-in-law and my dad. were probably some of the first people in their generation who moved to the US for, MBA and very, interesting studies abroad. And for me, the American friendship, which I think you guys incarnate so well. I was so touched when I heard you, chat in this moment while we were waiting all to be together, because it reminds me of all these moments in my childhood of shared friendship between my parents and their crew from Princeton and Stanford and all these great places where I've been a lot. And so for me, the dream has always been, we stayed in the US some years in my childhood, and then I went back to Europe and mostly Paris, and then it was, a mutual agreement with my husband and I, who also studied in the US, that we would go back at some point. And we did it, only 6 years ago, pretty much in tough conditions. We left really everything and managed to move to New York. And I'm not far from you, I think, Liz. I'm also in Brooklyn. I started in Barham Hill, Carroll Gardens, but now I'm in Park Slope. Yes. So the book came from that observation that, when we move from a country to another. I started in a big organization in the US when I was actually before an entrepreneur in France, doing market research and sociological studies. And it's been like, going down, a few floors down, up to, down to the basement, really, in terms of discovery, exploration, surprise, and challenges. Managing people in the US is not the way I used to manage, people in France. And so progressively, we started to accumulate stories. And I was always reaching out to friends, oh, have you noticed this? The first year I did my performance reviews, with my team, I just did everything wrong, with all the things that you should not do. I was very straightforward. I was too direct, certainly too French and negative, and starting with, things that didn't go well instead of, always starting with that positive note, which is one chapter, of course, in our book. And so Sabine and I started working together on projects, and then, we decided to go for this book because we wanted to give substance, to bring to life those stories and these experiences. And so we did these interviews. And really the goal for us was to give equal voice to Americans and to French people. We didn't try to be scientific. We didn't try to be comprehensive. We just wanted to hear people's stories, real stories and experiences. And the more we went into the process of that research, in a way, I think it was really a research, we discovered the depths and the intensity of the emotion. And that was what surprised us most. Some American people suffered so much working in a French context. Some people at L'Oreal really complaining about the attitude of the French, and vice versa, really.
And
we
also,
said, okay, we got to do this book. We want.
If I can add,
go, Sabine.
The interesting thing is that it was really difficult for both of us to stay neutral, right? To be impartial, because Agathe, she saw, she had her experience as a French manager working with Americans. I had the opposite experience. So I had the experience when I moved to France. I mean, I resisted for 6 years, and then I packed everything and went back to Italy because I said, I can just not deal with the French people. I get upset all the time. I was really crying in the toilet to say, okay, Sabine, if you're here, they hired you because you are bringing something to the company. But they had to convince me every day about that because it was so hard. It was so harsh. I was feeling attacked every single day because I didn't graduate in France, because I was not French, because I was going too fast in English, and because I was bullet pointing. So it's super funny because Agathe and I, we had really, it was for us so obvious for doing the book because as we met with a common, client at the end. So Agathe was doing research, I was doing the communication and marketing. And at a certain point, we gotta learn to work together, Agathe and I. And at the end of the day, I got to say, Sabine, I have this project in my mind, but I don't want to do it alone. So how do you feel to do it with me? So I was kind of overwhelmed, right? I said, oh my God, finally I can express myself, right? So put all my experience, and he said, no, it's not what we're going to do. We're going to interview people. So for me, it was super hard to be impartial, but we made it. It's totally impartial. And I think that, as Agathe said, it both of our experience, and when we were listening, to the interviewed people, both of us were kind of, we experience all of that. So this I think it's a deep personal experience / guiding the people through the interview to get the best out of it. Make sense?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, we managed to gather some content from 50 interviews, and these people really, expressed all their feelings of what happened in specific situations. And we managed to create a quite interesting, I hope, concept in terms of what a book can be, because we have put together some quotes that really show the different ways to think and to approach a topic, and how you can feel about a specific topic. We also have tried to bring a few tips and tricks, certainly not for people like you who've been experiencing these differences, for many years, but maybe for newcomers, an American people being newly hired in a French company, or a French person moving to the US. So we see this book a little bit like a starter's kit, with some useful and very practical content, as well as a very accessible, gathering of experiences to immerse a bit, faster. Because as Sabine said, for us, it's taken some time, and we were thinking that maybe if we had read a similar book before that we had these experiences, we would have probably saved, time, energy, and also harming people, because I think, and that's the French speaking now, when we're so direct, as French, we just hurt people, and the goal of life is definitely to have fun and be better people all together, and certainly not to hurt anyone. So that's also the motivation, deep down, is how can we make those collaborations more productive, of course, but also more joyful and more happy. We also want to call the attention of people working in HR, because we realize that many of the people we talked to didn't actually have an onboarding session. At best, you have a few hours of a workshop, that tells you the key things. And many times it's also, everyday life, not specifically, work relationship. Or you can find things on the internet, or you can find very intense book, very deeply analytical. But if you have that type of sessions or learning initially, what you do not really get on the go is ongoing training and insights about one another. So it's also a question to HR people: how can we trigger curiosity on the long term, in the long run? And we're asking, why not imagine, more things like cultural capsules, of what is the essence of a country. What is the essence of the US, that we could, distill to the French? How about learning the language? You, in what I heard from all of you, you're completely bilingual. You're very, interested in the other's culture. You're in the club because you love, the French culture, and vice versa. But that's not true for everybody, especially, young professionals in starting a career. So The
Yeah,
reason for the book is all that.
I,
Um,
s- I agree, and
and of
also
course,
what we. Oh,
go
sorry.
ahead.
No, and also I think that there
Go,
are
go,
really
Sabine.
deep, they're really deep stereotypes on both sides, right? So, and we really tried to break, all those misunderstanding based on really, deep thoughts on both sides. And I mean, the American could be really fun, right? It's not just only about, oh, be careful, you're going to be sued. It's there's a lot of stuff of fun stuff, and they have their way, to have fully days. They don't have the same, vacation, schedule. So, and they might leave earlier, but it doesn't mean that they're, kind of lazy people. And it doesn't mean that because the French, they're in the office till really late in the evening, it doesn't mean that they're working machines. Because don't forget that in May in France, the economy is completely shut down because of the different holidays and everything. So this is something that we really, really wanted to bring into this book, is to really to take all the stereotypes away, because there are really deep stereotypes on both sides, right, Agathe?
Yeah, yeah. And so the book is really trying to be capturing this subjectivity. And if you've seen it already, or if you want to take a look at it, you also see that we have added, a very careful selection of artistic pieces to illustrate every chapter, which are also quite conceptual and subjective themselves as well, to really, insist on that message of, yes, the emotions and the fact that, we should really go beyond stereotypes and really look at the person for what she or he can bring, to the team in a work context, and really understand, how to leverage those different assets from both cultures in
Agathe,
order to really be
I think
successful
you should
together.
talk about the topics. Just bring on the topics, because you do that so well.
Yeah. And by the way, please interrupt us and ask us your questions, because we also want this to be very interactive. It's a little bit of a free flow on our end. We're trying to explain and comment a little bit what we've done with the book, but we're happy to be, also answering your questions, and we also actually have a few for you. So hopefully we can leave enough time for this. But just to give you a little bit more substance, as Sabine suggests. Yes, go ahead, John.
John.
Yeah.
If you can do what you do now with your microphone, keep your microphone close, because that way your picture will show up. Otherwise, it doesn't. So if you could do that, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay.
No problem.
Yes, Francis, you have a question. Francis, you're on mute.
Yes. Yeah. Can you give us concrete examples of what you were very surprised between the difference between the US and the French? and don't be shy.
Yes. This is the book.
Don't be. Yes. No. Yeah, I see. What were your favorite? What were your favorite examples?
Yes, actually, I think we've been surprised by most of what we heard, not necessarily the topics themselves, but the intensity of the experiences and the emotions that were, hidden behind those experiences. So I'm going to highlight a few of the topics and explain why we've been surprised in each of this. So the first one, for example, is the relationship with work, right? Work, what for? Typically, the French struggle to hire Americans. In the experience. Again, we're not trying to be, completely representative, but the experiences that we've captured say that. and the French still don't understand that what matters for Americans is not just vacations, right? They have a very intense relationship with work. Work is really important to live. So we have this sentence, live to work or work to live, but what's the reality behind? If you hear a French guy saying, well, I offered them a great package with great vacations, but no, what they want is just money. And, excuse my words, but that sucks, what explains that? So it's also understanding the relationship with work for the Americans. Of course, we don't have in America the same safety net. We don't have the same support. So for an American, it's actually, yes, it's important to build a career. It's important also to socially progress. When for the French, sometimes, at least some of those we interviewed, you would expect to see, more balance and having interest in your work and not just being driven by the financial questions, because they can. So the surprise is not just that, because that, when I simplify it this way, actually seems a little bit stereotypical. But what's interesting is the approach to this. Some managers still don't understand how to speak to an American person to hire and convince the American person to come and join, and vice versa. So we have a few great quotes, on that, but then, we also have captured some emotions: impatience, judgment, paranoia, which at the end, drives some French to say, okay, I'm not going to hire an American anymore. I'm going to try other nationalities. Another topic is about, let me capture maybe.
Would you like me to give you one of my favorites?
Yeah, of course, please.
So you're going to have both versions, Francis. Is that okay for you? So for me, the biggest challenge was the positive, the positive mindset versus the negative mindset. This was for me a really big deal. I mean, I was raised in the American way where, my parents were really, every achievement was celebrated, and this is how I was raised. My dad was at the UCLA, and he was a scientist, and the personal values were really, really important to him. So when I came in France and I had to hire the entire team, and then I was proud of the people I was hiring. I was really happy because I hired them based on really a lot of factors. And then when my bosses in France, in Paris, came to me and say, oh my God, this one, he's just doing crap. I say, how can you say that? I mean, based on what was wrong? What went wrong? So for me, it was a huge shock about the negativity, because they were always pointing finger. First of all, there were two types of negativity, right? It was the finger pointing all the time in a meeting. Something went wrong, who did it? Okay, they say, well, let's say it in a different way. Something went wrong. Why did it get wrong, right? What is the problem? Instead, I don't need to have a guilty person in the meeting room. I don't like that. And then also, constantly when you had to do, the annual review, so the first thing, the message is, okay, first point out all the what went wrong. Okay, I was saying, well, maybe we can see what did we achieve, right? I mean, we're here to make the business, right? We're here for making money at the end of the day. So yeah, we're making money, but we need to understand. So it was a constant. I personally, my biggest shock was about the positive and the versus negative mindset. And I also, I think it's also, we cannot be too harsh to the French people, because I think it's also about education. And I have 3 children, and we practice it, with we practice it, with, I'm sorry, it's the phone. So even in the French school, right? I got, an entire page with all written in red. So I had a minus, I don't know how much in a grade. I said, how is that even possible? I mean, you in a dictate or something like that, you cannot. I mean, I was really, um, I was so sad for my children because poor guys, they came back at home and they said, Mom, this is my dictate. And we worked so hard for it. And it was more red than blue. I said, okay, honey, don't worry. We're going to work it out. We got to fix it. And so I really had to pump them up, every time. And then this is what I was feeling in business as well. So I think that at the end of the day, both culture, they're so about how they got raised and how their education, was not. So I cannot say, no, the French are terrible. They were raised in a different way. I think the culture is different. The education is different. And it's a different mindset. But this was for me, oh man, this was a pain in the ass.
Yeah. What else? The way we run meetings. Also the Americans, come in with the meeting, back to back, and every meeting is 30 minutes, and very well organized with a clear agenda and 10 minutes to really discuss the action points. The French, the first time they fall into this world, do not really understand. The French always say, we do meetings to have another meeting, to continue it. So that's also, illustrated in the book, is the level of sufferance of the French, not understanding, not feeling human anymore, because it's so, action driven. When in contrast, the Americans really feel that the French are not productive enough, not organized enough, that they should really come with clear ideas and already prepared on the meeting, which they're never doing. And, again, frustrations, annoyance, confusion, perplexity, feeling of inefficiency. So you will see in the book that we highlight on every chapter, we highlight those issues, and we have the perspective and the quotes from the people. And again, everybody is right. I mean, I think that question, Francis, what surprised us the most, I think, is that the feeling of, for the French, them feeling not human anymore, because they have to downtone their human side. Also, in terms of gender, we also have the do's and don'ts in the office. I think the French, frankly, are more used in flirting and looking at people and colleagues, as gendered people. In the US, you don't do this, right? And you don't joke about, politics and stuff like that. And again, they haven't been prepared, so they didn't really get a brief. And of course, they, have issues. Why did a French woman tell us, "Oh, I always felt alone in the lift. When I was in the lift, the men were going out." And she didn't understand. After a month of, men going out of the lift when she was inside, she went to see HR and said, "What's my problem?" And HR laughed so much and said, "Okay, you don't know the rule. We don't leave a man and a woman alone in a lift." Okay, understood. So we have, I think, also tried to capture, we didn't want to be too dramatic and too serious in the book. So we've also captured, stories of everyday life, with anecdotes like this one, or anecdotes about, having your agenda completely booked during lunchtime, which is also an issue for the French when they want to go out and have lunch. And parties, collective parties organized. Yeah.
And the team, this was another thing too, right? I mean, this is, I mean, we in the US, we are raised with sports, so we are embracing teams. We like to, to pass the ball from one person to the other one. We're working together, and we love sports. Not everybody has his own sports, his own, but at the end of the day, the sports really shows you, even if you're in an individual sport or even a group sport, I mean, a team sport, doesn't matter. The American spirit is really about team. And Americans learned that in a really early age. And in France, this is a kind of something sometimes they have to, to have some playing, some group spirit, right? It's not just only individual, and in the good and the bad, it's when you have good results, it's the result of an entire team. You work together, you made it. And if something went wrong, you all did wrong, right? But I think that this is also, so we had the team. This was something that we really, oh my God, I mean, Agathe and we heard so much about it. And do you remember also, Agathe, that there's another thing, because I don't want to sound too dramatic and negative. What the Americans are really good in is to celebrate stuff, right? I mean, we never forget, to celebrate an achievement. We never forget to all those days, kind of the P days, the children days in the office, the St. Patrick Day, I mean, and whatever. And this is part of our culture. And I remember really deeply that when the French people came, I mean, I was doing that in my office and baby shower, for a team, teammates. And they were saying, okay, so now, can we not do that between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m.? Why should we do that between 8 p.m. and 9 p.m.? It's life. It's part of we're all working together hard. So we should celebrate stuff. So this and discovering your office when you come in the morning with balloons and nice stuff, I think, or for Christmas or for the holidays, I think this is a really thing. I think that's something that, I mean, I was happy to bring into the office in Paris. And I think this is what we're also illustrating in our book, that that's not only, difficult rules, but that's a lot of joy. It's a lot of fun experience and fun topics. And that at the end of the day, we're perfectly, able to work together. Does that make sense to you?
So tell us about you and your experiences and also maybe your questions. We're happy to hear you. Yeah. Go ahead, Nina. You're on mute. We can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now yes.
Oh, bonsoir. In 2011, in New York, there was a pièce de théâtre that was called Chinglish, and it was about the business people.
We've lost you, Nina.
Can't hear me?
Yep. Now it's good.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes.
In 2011, there was a Broadway play called Chinglish about Chinese American business relations and how they didn't understand one another. And can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you have considered pièce de théâtre about what about using your stories, something
that's a great idea. Do you want to help us do this project?
You're both so dynamic, and I'm sure your book is wonderful. I want to read it, but I think in the theater it would be great for people in New York and in France and Paris to actually see les scènes acted out. About
Oh my God, Nina, you're pushing us to the next subject, to the next project. We're already digesting the first book and you want us now to go on Broadway. But I'm really happy that I think it makes totally sense though.
Yeah. I think it's bonne idée. Oui.
Yeah, and we'll
help us out.
We'll check Chinglish. Yes.
Yeah, it's a good show.
Yeah, it's a good show.
Thank you for
the tip. Did some of you got I'm sure you all have kind of experience
Sabine,
like that.
Sabine, hold on. Can I interrupt? Arlette is willing to ask a question.
Oh,
Arlette,
absolutely, Arlette. Go.
You're on mute, huh? So you need to activate your microphone, Arlette.
There you go.
Yes.
Is it done? Did I?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, good. First of all, I want to congratulate the two of you because I think it's extraordinary. And frankly, I can't wait to read the book. Does L'Albertine have your book?
Yes. I checked it. I was today at Albertine, and they are right on the second floor in front of the staircase.
So I know where they are, right.
I was so happy to see it.
And had your book. I I find your exchange fascinating because it's two cultures, whereas I was working in a multicultural environment in the European Union, and we started out
God.
6 cultures.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't think we had the same type of, I think it was more, in a certain way, more balanced, because it wasn't just one and the other. It was 6 different cultures. And then and then I came to New York, where we were 12 member states, but then we were accredited to the United Nations. That was 165 cultures.
Oh my goodness.
So I think Francis might agree, it's, in a certain way, it's easier if you are sort of, quote unquote, noyé, drowned in any other cultures, which means obviously there are some which are more relevant or more important than others, yes, but still you are interfacing with that many different aspects. Francis, what do you think?
Yes,
I totally agree with you.
Yeah, right. Francis, you shaved the same thing. Oh, should I?
Francis.
Yeah. I also worked.
Thank you, Agathe.
I also worked all my life in the multinational environment. I remember the first time I arrived from France to America as a young Frenchman. I would walk into the office of my boss, and what would I do? I would walk to my boss, who was behind his desk, and I would shake his hand. And the second day,
we have that one.
and the second day, he said, "Francis, we don't do that." And I was quite hurt that he would tell me that. We don't shake hands when we walk into the office. So okay, so the next day, of course, I did not shake hands anymore. But you know this.
You know what, Francis? We had a super funny story about the shaking hand. I cannot resist to tell it to you because it was so fun. So we interviewed, a guy who he was American, was a French boss, exactly the same situation as him. And the boss, exactly as you said, he was coming every. So it was so funny. So the French boss came over to the American, shaking hands, exactly the same, and says, "Oh, and so how did you react?" And so it was so funny because the interview guy that we had, he said, "You know what? I never had the courage for telling him that we don't do it in that way. Between you and me, I was a germaphobe, and I had my sanitizer under the desk, and I was cleaning my hands every day, but I never had, the courage for telling him." This was so sweet.
Another example. Again, coming from France, where we are very formal in a professional setting. My boss, another boss, was French speaking, and I would vouvoyer her. There was no way that I could say tu, because I mean you don't tutoyer your boss. And it took me years. I became friend with her, and at the end of I would tutoyer her, but it took me, and then of course they would all call by first name, which I thought was also shocking. That say, "Hello, Allegra," which this would be unheard of in a French setting, where
How do you do it now, Francis? How do you do it now? Do you say tu more easily, and do you go still with a surname or not?
Yeah. Who has asked the question?
No, it's fine.
Oh, Sabine. So now I can say Sabine, and I can say tu to you. And but we have the expression "on n'a pas gardé des cochons ensemble." I don't know that expression. One. So, but those are the we are much more formal on the French side than here, which I love. I love the American side for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And Catherine, you also had a question or an experience.
Yes. Well, my question. I actually work with 2 Frenchmen, but one's American French, but the one guy, he's about 30 years old. And my question is, when you did interviews, did you notice a difference between the generations? Because the younger man seems so much more open and relatable, So I don't know if it's just because everyone's more exposed now globally to different cultures. But compared to like 20 years ago when I worked with the French, they were more like the stereotypical that you were saying, the cynical and not standoff, but like, you know, the more formal. And he's just very open and positive and almost like an American, more relatable. I don't know if you saw difference in the generations.
So there are definitely, you know, differences, and it's very interesting, Catherine, that you're raising this question, because we actually were, you know, thinking of running a panel on that specific angle to go a little bit deeper on that. What we see is there are the parameters. Really depends, you know, when we talk about the U.S., where in the U.S., you know, between New York or Dallas or Atlanta or San Francisco, you would not have the same, or Houston, or wherever you go, it won't be exactly the same. So we're not going very deep in the book on that question. We didn't try to be scientific on that aspect, but we saw more open-mindedness, of course, in some cities versus others. It's also depending on the type of business, right, and the company size. Of course, the startups, you know, are more millennial style, so more casual, and the two, even from, you know, the young French, can be adopted a little bit more easily and quicker. So these parameters come and blurry a little bit the read on the generational question. I think young French can remain actually very French, and young Americans can remain very American. So as you say, it also depends on how exposed they have been to other cultures, right? And what has been their education and their background. So again, not a very clear view on that. What we notice is the level of preparation, it always seems a little bit insufficient anyhow. Because, you know, again, if you don't know how to run a meeting or to do a performance review at the end of a year because you've never managed, you know, the other, you know, culture, people from other culture, you know, even if you're a younger generation, it won't really change. So difficult to answer. Too many parameters, but you know, hopefully it'll get better, and you know, and people will be less judgmental. I don't know if anyone else has other experiences or thoughts on this question. You, Sabine, and the team.
Therese is ready.
Very interesting. So much of what you said resonated, especially Sabine, what you said about the school, because we lived in Paris and my son came home with all those red marks.
Oh yeah, that was a nightmare.
I wanted to say to you, as a fellow writer, thank you for your book, and to suggest that if either of you spend much time in Paris, you should consider, once the pandemic is over, trying to run a seminar at the American Church in Paris. It's enormous, and they have twice a year something called Bloom Where You're Planted, and they run a workshop just like what you're saying for a cross-cultural thing, and you can sell a lot of books, and I think you would find a lot of people that would really you know, appreciate your message.
Oh, thank you so much for your tip. This is super. This is precious. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Well, we hope to go back
yes,
to Paris
thank you,
anyway.
Therese. The book will be the book will be translated in French this summer, and it'll be ready for the French market in September.
And also,
so
you know,
and
also we discovered while we were, you know, testing readers and everything, that there's another country that we're not talking that much about, and they have exactly the same experiences. It's the Canadian, our neighbors, the Canadian with the Quebec. So it was so funny because I tested, you know, a friend of mine, and he's a Canadian from Toronto, and then he moved to Quebec, and he had the kind of same, you know, experience. So I said, oh my God, this is so fun. And yeah, I think that at the end of the day, those cross-cultural, and the French culture is really
it's a really ancestral and big culture with a lot, of, I mean, they are master in culture. So, but it's funny that sometimes they need to go a little bit back, and to listen to the other ones as well. And so when we discussed with the Canadian, we discovered some similar aspect in their experiences. There's no Canadian here, or is it?
Yeah.
Who's Canadian? Robert is Canadian? Oh my God. You need to unmute. You need to unmute on the computer. Yay, we can hear you.
I'm not Canadian, except both my parents were from British Columbia. Very, very different from Eastern Canada. It's more like like in California.
I agree.
And it's back and forth, north, south. In fact, before the jet planes and internet and all that stuff, they really had very little interaction with the East. Western Canada and Eastern Canada were, as was true pretty much with the United States, were two different universes culturally. Yeah. And my family moved back and forth from Canada and Western United States for several generations. Quite different.
Oh, but you're Canadian. I love the Canadians.
My wife here is from South America, and she could probably, if she were inclined to, out to this too. And I lived in South America for many years. So.
Where? In which area?
Argentina, Brazil. Martha's from Colombia.
Oh, wow.
I lived in Venezuela, but I lived in Argentina.
But look, in Brazil, it's the same between the people from Sao Paulo and people from Rio, right? With the cariocas and everything. So, but this partner is Brazilian, so I'm experiencing that too.
I always compared it to the difference between LA and San Francisco, because I mean, they're quite different. Anyway.
No, I think you're right, Robert. I think that really this kind of, of cross-cultural experiences. So we took, because on our background and our experiences, we took France versus America. Even I don't like to say versus, it's just two different cultures we're talking about. But at the end of the day, you have many, look, I grew up in Switzerland at the end, and Switzerland we have 4 languages, and this is way more complicated. So I think that we're ready to do a lot of other books, right? You know that, Agathe? And I think this is exactly at the end of the day, we want the people to be humble, to listen to the other, to understand the other. We're not saying you need absolutely to embrace the other culture, but almost listen a little bit and learn to listen, to think, and to understand why the other party is doing it a different way, right? So, and this was really, I mean, this book was a huge joy for us to do.
So thank you so much. If there are not any other questions, we're getting close to our time, and we really appreciate Agathe and Sabine. Your very heartfelt conversation. It makes us really want to get the book as soon as possible, because there's a great joie de vivre in the experiences that you are describing in your book, and the experiences that you describe now. And it really goes to the heart of what our club is all about, the Paris American Club, about bringing these two cultures together, bringing these different ways of looking at the world, and sharing different backgrounds, that ways that we have been brought up to better appreciate each other. So we thank you both so much for joining us tonight. It's been really wonderful. We've recorded the session. It'll probably be up on our website tomorrow, and then if you need it for any other purposes, of course, feel free. So thank you all very much.
Thank you so much.
I think that Francis, I think that Robert, I think John, Francis embraced something.
I also want to thank especially Agathe, who it's 2:00 in the morning in Crete, in Greece. But as Sabine said, in America we celebrate. And in Crete, it's already tomorrow. Tomorrow is a special birthday. for our president. So 1, 2, 3. Happy
birthday to you. Happy birthday
to you. Happy
birthday,
birthday,
dear
dear John.
John.
Happy birthday
to
to
you.
you.
Joyeux anniversaire.
Congratulations.
Merci beaucoup. Merci.
Bon anniversaire.